Hello, in this tutorial I'm going to show you about how to use Excel to prepare travel demand model data, demographic data for 3D display. And this is mostly about Excel because there's a few tricks in Excel that are really useful for lifelong efforts. And I just wanted to show you what some of them are. So that's the main purpose, is to give you some skills in Excel that you might not pick up otherwise. So this first screen that I have open is, I did this in ArcGIS. I just opened the traffic analysis zone file and selected polygons. This is the St. George area in Utah. The Arizona border on the bottom, the Nevada border on this west side. And so I said, all right, here's all of the urban area. And I labeled things as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so 1 is the center boulevard of St. George, the most walkable part. 2 is some auto-oriented commercial areas across the area. 3 is the old part of St. George. 4 is things that are more suburban and pretty new, but and not completely built out yet, but it's getting, this is where the growth is going. And then 5 is ex-urban, and 6 is even more ex-urban than that. So then here you can see the kind of the central St. George part. 1 is St. George Boulevard, all of those, and then 2. So what I have done then is said, I've labeled those as ring, like it's a ring around the city, or what kind of a ring. And then I said, I'm going to create a walkable development scenario for 2050. So if the regular 2050 scenario is auto-oriented, then this is going to be a really walkable scenario. So what I've done then is gone to the travel demand model data and pulled in, this is shapefile information. It has the TAZ ID and which ring it is in, basically. And well, first this is the actual TAZ shapefile data, and I have over here, I thought I had a ring. Anyway, yeah, ring right here. So ring is in this column, and then I went to the 2020, 30, or 50, and I did a VLOOKUP. So this is one of the things I wanted to show you in Excel, is this VLOOKUP function right here. So study this if you can. It says look up this TAZ ID at this other location, and then select the second column that matches with that thing. So then it goes and looks up and brings that data over. So VLOOKUP is a super useful function. And then so then these yellow tabs is the 2020 demographics, 2050, and then my walkable. So you see total households, total population, employment for 2020, and then I switch over to 2050. This is the way that the MPO created the data in 2050. And then I created a walkable scenario, and if you look through the spreadsheet, you can see that it's actually calculations, so it's coming from other places, walkable factors times 20 to 2050. So what is walkable factors? So walkable factors is saying VLOOKUP, the AP2, what's that? So which ring it is. So my ring is way over here on the right side. So if it's in ring number 5, then I'm going to select, or I'm going to go to this lookup factor and choose the third column. So let's look at factor lookup. So here it says these are the rings. I'm going to go to the third column. So ring number 5, it's going to put in the 0.6. And this is what the other ones are. So if I go back to here, you can see that I've got 0.6 for a lot of job related things. I've got 0.59 for household related things. If I go scroll down, it changes 0.84, 0.7. All of that's coming from right here. So I've done VLOOKUPs to look up 0.84, 0.7, and like that. So then once I have this factors tab fully populated, then I can come over here to Walkable, and I'm just going to multiply my original 2050 by the factors, and that's what creates this. And then I can do a pivot table over here, and I should show you how to do a pivot table. Let's see. So if I wanted to do a pivot table, I'm going to select the data that I want to have in the pivot table. I'm going to insert pivot table and put it in an existing workbook location, and I'll just put it right here, and OK. So now it's there. The next thing I do is I say I want to drop that into row like that, and I want to see total households. It'll do sum of. If you want to change that, you just click value field settings, and it'll give you some other options besides just the sum, like that, and you can just go on like that. So now this is telling me the total population and households and jobs that are in each of these 6 geographic places that I totaled up. So that's what I've done up here, and I've done this for 2020. This is 2050, and this is 2050 Walkable. So I won't repeat that, but that's what I've done. And then the next thing that I wanted you to see is that pivot tables are great for summarizing the data, but they're not so great for working with the data after it's summarized. So what I tend to do is I come over here and I right click and just paste values right there, because it's a lot easier to just create new formulas off of the values than to grab them out of the pivot table. However, that means that if you change the pivot table, you've got to repaste the values, or else all your formulas won't work. So that's something to think about. Okay, and then this little plus minus thing is something that you should know about in Excel. Excel, it's super useful. You can hide things, like everybody knows how to do that, hide. But one thing that's crummy about hiding data is that you don't see very easily, you don't get a clue that there is hidden data. You have to look for a break in the sequence of letters or something, unhide. But the same thing as hide is I can go to data, and then there's this group button, and if I group it, then it puts a little plus minus sign up here, which it does the same thing as hide, but it gives me a little plus sign that says, oh, there's hidden data there, and all I got to do is open and click it. So I so prefer this over hiding things, and I highly recommend that you do that. It works on rows too, so you can just do this and group rows, and it'll do the same thing. Okay, so what else did I want to show you? So rounding, round to the nearest 100. It's bad form to produce tables that have a mess of numbers in here that distracts the eye and makes it hard to understand what's going on. So you really need to round things to either the nearest 100 or nearest 1,000, whatever makes the most sense. So it's called significant digits, and you basically ignore things that are beyond your confidence level anyway. And also it just helps to make things easier to understand. So mround is the function. You round this, comma, nearest 100 or nearest 500, nearest whatever. It'll round it to whatever is the number you put there. Okay. So now I'm going to show you how to build good charts with Excel. So what I've done in this set of columns right here, or in this block, is I've linked it to the above data. So I said ring 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and households. So I want to just look at households in 2020, 2050, and the 2050 walkable scenario that I did. So all I did was I linked to the households from here, and then on the next column over I did this one, and then the next one. Basically it's just trying to line them up so they'll make a good chart. So all of this is just households. And then here what I've done is, because charts, I like to put labels on the charts. So to do that you can go to add format, or well, I already have data labels, so I'll just remove it. So if I remove that, then I go back here, it creates an add data labels option, and it's coming from this column. But because okay, so you can make it bigger so that they're visible. So all of this was the data, but 68,300 up here doesn't fit nicely. So what I did instead was I said I just need to round it to the nearest thousand so it'll fit nicely. So this is a good way to do a good chart, is reduce these things down. Then another thing that's kind of interesting, well, I'm going to ungroup this data first. So data, ungroup, and then I will group only the 2020 data. So when I group the 2020 data, then it removes, when I hide it, it removes it from the chart because it's hidden. So now all I have is the 2050 and the 2050 walkable scenario that I created. So it's a more simple chart that way. And now I'll open it back up. So what this says is that in 2020, that St. George Boulevard area had 500 housing units within that district. By 2050, they're increasing that by 4, so 2,200. So that's a lot more housing units in that district than are there right now. But then in my walkable scenario, I've gone 10 times higher than that. Said I want to see 21,000 housing units, all on a space that's just kind of small like this. So this is 21,000 housing units. Now that would be pretty intense. That's some tall stuff. I don't know how tall it is, but that's one thing we'll see when we do 3D extrusions. But so this is where the factors come from. So I use 10 here, and I said if it's in, I want to take whatever jobs were in 2050 jobs and make them 3 times higher. Housing units, I want to make it 10 times higher. So this is how I've balanced that out. And the way that I figured out the factors was I went over here and said I need my 2050 walkable and my 2050 to have about the same number of housing units, about the same population, about the same of everything. So I just would look at the pivot table results. If it said 170,000, then I'd come back to here and say I've got to lower something. So I'd lower something a little bit. So in order to put people in these places, I had to take it away from here, which is why these are above 1 and these are below 1. It was because I was taking it away from somewhere else. And that's it. So the other thing about this chart that I wanted to show you is how to add dynamic text boxes to it. So I'll just do that. So what you got to do is select the chart, then you go to Insert Text Box, and normally you can just say text, and it's just kind of non-dynamic, it's just there. But the way that you can make it dynamic is you select the box, then you come up here to the formula bar and you hit the equal sign, and then you look for the number that you want to put in it. And then it says it pulls it in with a hard reference like that, and ta-da, now I've got this. So what happens now is I can format it, make it whatever I want, make it really big, and if I come here to this number and I change this to 50, then it changes over here. So anything that you type in will go into here. So this is how you can just get more data on here that's dynamically linked. And this St. George Boulevard, you can see right here that I have linked it to X47. So this is X47. So that's that. Oh, and that was the other thing I wanted to show you in Excel, was how to build a concatenated string. So here I have one, and here I have St. George Boulevard, but I wanted to join them together so that I could get a good label for my bottom row here. So to do that, I had to concatenate, and this is how you concatenate. So I say this cell and then I can do quotation mark, parenthesis or colon, space, and then the next thing, and I get that. So that's what it does. Pretty nice. All right, so that's more or less the end of this tutorial. What have I shown you? I've shown you how to do good charts, how to dynamically link text boxes, how to do concatenations, how to do pivot tables, how to good practice of rounding your data to something that's a little easier to see and understand, and how to do VLOOKUPs and walkability factors. What else have we done? Okay, the only other thing that I want to do now is create a results file or tab that I can export out to GIS and then do some 3D stuff with it. So I'm going to do that next. I'll hit pause while I do that and show you the result. Okay, so I've prepared a tab for export called Export to ArcGIS, and here's what it is. So I put in all of the TAZ file zones, and I labeled this as H20, households in 20, and then I linked it to the cell in the 2020 that was that. Did the same for 2050 and for the walkable scenario. And then I created these fields called jobs, and then I said what's the percentage of what is it, walkable versus the previous one, so how much was there versus how much is there now. So this is a 59% of what was there before, and these basically just reflect exactly my factors. That's exactly what they are, as the factors. So, and then if there's a 0, this if statement is useful. If C7 is 0, then just put in a 0. Otherwise, do the division, because if I don't do that, then I end up with a divide by 0. So that is what I've got ready, and now I'm going to end this tutorial on Excel and move over to ArcGIS.